They sat me at the kids' table, as if my silence were small enough to color in. My name is Rowan Hart, 31, public librarian, maker of quiet lists. Saturday afternoon I walked into my Aunt Lila's split level in Waverly, a neat river town with cottonwood shade and porches that carry every whisper. It was my cousin Brenna's baby shower, and family filled the rooms like a practiced chorus, bows, pale macaroons, a banner that read, "Oh baby." I carried a pale gray gift bag with tissue tucked like a folded wing. My palms were damp, though the house felt chilled with forced air and rehearsed cheer. "Rowan, sweetie, you can put that there," Aunt Lila said, pointing to a far end of the gift table, behind a mountain of diapers and 3 identical white warmers. She kissed my cheek with the same precision she used to stack plates. "Drinks are by the patio. We made little cucumber cups." She didn't ask how I was. She rarely did. Brenna saw me and let her eyes slide over like I was a mild inconvenience, like a bird's shadow crossing a lawn. We grew up 2 blocks apart, shared summers and bikes and braces. Somewhere between her business degree and my second year cataloging folk music, she learned to speak at people, not to them. "Hey, Ro," she said, breezy, flicking a curl off her shoulder. "Cute dress. Very librarian." The circle around her laughed with that soft, sticky sound that always means someone else is the joke. My assigned seat card waited at a round table with paper crowns and crayons. A tiny boy waved a blue marker in a figure 8. I smiled and told him it looked like a racetrack. Across the room, the main table shimmered with glass and lace. My name had not been printed for that table, and I knew why. Last Christmas, after my miscarriage, Aunt Lila had said, in the tones reserved for weather and casseroles, "Some women are meant to be the world's best aunties." And that's a calling, too. I had stood beside the sink and watched the steam rise as if it could erase the words. The games began, and I laughed when laughter was required. I guessed melted chocolate bars in diapers, can you believe? I pinned tiny clothespins to a twine line, hands steady like a dealer at a quiet casino. People floated to me for a polite hello and away again to the shine of Brenna's stories. When I offered to help in the kitchen, Aunt Lila tapped my wrist. "You just relax, dear. Let the moms talk." In my purse, the zipper teeth clicked softly when I pressed the tab. Inside, the envelope was heavy with folded paper and glossy proof. My heart beat in a slow, even measure, the way it had since the 12-week appointment on Tuesday. "We'll print 3, Nurse Maya said then, gentle. "One for you, one for the fridge, one for whoever still thinks you need proof you exist." I had carried that 3rd print like a compass. I had not told many people yet, not out of fear, but out of a tender respect for the quiet beginnings of a life. Still, I had grown tired of being treated like an empty room. The house buzzed with talk of bassinets and birth plans. The hum made the absence of my name on their lips feel deliberate. When Brenna lifted her flute for a pre-gifts toast, she smiled that wide, curated smile. "To new life, to family, to being chosen," she said. Foam clung to glass rims. People nodded like metronomes. I lifted my water and felt the cool against my knuckles. The first spark wasn't anger. It was clarity, clear as river water in morning light. I would not raise my voice. I would not ask for a chair. I would place what I had where it belonged and let the room decide its own echo. The gifts opened with the rustle of tissue and the applause of scented hands. Brenna's registry had been a map of wants, and the room loved to follow directions. A grandmotherly neighbor gave a hand-knit blanket, pale as almond milk. "I'll take it to the hospital," Brenna said, like the whole town would follow her there. My chair wobbled on the patio pavers, a child's sneaker pressed against my calf and left a dusty moon. I watched the choreography I knew too well, my mother leaning in with advice she saved for people not named me, Aunt Lila narrating like a sportscaster, the cousins stacking boxes like a wedding tower. When someone spilled lemonade, I handed over napkins and got a tight smile for the trouble. Don't fuss, my mother murmured to me, as if fuss were the same as existing. Let the moms talk, she repeated, an echo that made my mouth taste like old pennies. There is a fatigue that doesn't show in the mirror. It builds from every small exclusion, every laugh that lands half a room away, every sentence that starts with, some women. After the loss, I learned how to carry myself like a quiet boat on a stone river. Evan, my husband, had sat with me on the kitchen floor in December as twilight pasted itself to the windows. He held my back, counted his breaths out loud until my own found a rhythm. We'll try again when your body says we can, he whispered into my hair. But even if it never does, you are not a void. He was working an extra shift at the hardware store today, a Saturday swap with a coworker whose kid had a soccer tournament. He had kissed my forehead by the door. You don't have to go, he said, not as permission, but as care. I went because there are rooms you have to enter if you want to see where your own walls are. While Brenna paraded rattles and sleep sacks, a cousin leaned in. You're good with kids, she said, watching me untie a balloon from a chair for the boy with the blue marker. You'll make the best aunt. The word landed like a small, polite stone. I smiled because I have learned the art of small shields. In the kitchen, I refilled my water while overhearing a conversation meant to be overheard. Rowan's always so sensitive, someone said, stacking dessert plates. She makes everything a thing. Another answered, I just think some people aren't meant for certain paths. The sink hummed. I stared at the faucet's chrome and saw my face as a warped coin, trying to stay round. I thought of Tuesday. Of lying on the exam table and seeing a flicker inside me like a match struck in a cave. Maya angled the monitor so I could see clearly. That's the heartbeat, she said, and I cried without sobbing, quiet tears sliding into my hairline. She printed the images, slid them into a sleeve, and asked me if I had support. I said yes, and I meant it. Evan. And one friend, Tessa, who brings soup and sits on the floor like it's pew wood, ready to listen. Back on the patio, the air carried grill smoke from a neighbor's yard. Ants found a sugar trail under the lemonade. Brenna lifted a pink onesie that said girl boss and looked at me while the room exploded with glee. It takes a special kind of woman to lead, she said, feigning magnanimity, as if I were a parable. You'll find your thing, Ro. It was meant to sound kind. It sounded like a sealed door. My heart did not race. The envelope waited, steady as a shoreline. I would not throw it on the table. I would not call for silence like a judge. My moment would wait for the room to take a breath, and then I would give the room the simplest possible truth. I wiped a water ring from the plastic tablecloth and felt the vow settle in me, not like a flare, but like a hand placed gently on a piano key. I would not ask these people to believe in me. I would let them read. Tessa texted as the cake knife flashed beneath the chandelier. How is it? I glanced at the gift table, at my gray bag tucked like a stone at the river's bend. Loud, I wrote. Also predictable. She replied with a single heart, then another after a beat, the two hearts looking like little lungs that knew how to keep their own time. Tell me when you're home. I will have tea ready. I slipped inside the hallway, away from the purr of congratulations, and opened my purse. The envelope was cream, unsealed. Inside, 3 ultrasound prints, glossy black night and bright white proof. On the top one, a small profile suggested a nose, a stubby hand, the round dark of a beginning. Tucked behind it, the folded letterhead from Dr. Abrams, 3 sentences confirming gestational age and good progress, for work accommodations if needed. I traced the corner with my nail until the paper squeaked. Maya had smiled when she signed it. Sometimes a paper is not for a boss, she said. Sometimes it is for a table that never gives you a chair. I loved her for that sentence, for the way it made room without setting anything on fire. I thought of the old stories about women who revealed their pregnancies by pressing a small booty into a palm, or by baking a tiny plastic baby into a cake, or by writing a clever line on a chalkboard. Those stories always came with squeals. I did not want squeals. I wanted stillness. I wanted air that recognized me. I slid the letter back in and held one ultrasound print in my palm. It was cool at first, then warmed quickly, as if the proof knew it had been claimed. My reflection floated on the glossy surface, faint as pond glass. Under the hum of the refrigerator, I could hear the ribbed ticking of the dining room clock, that old metronome of everything we pretend is ordinary. Row. My mother's voice came down the hall, careful, like she was approaching a dog she wasn't sure would bite. She touched my elbow. Her lipstick had feathered into the fine lines around her mouth. You're not hiding, are you? It was not concern. It was the family tone for don't disrupt the scene. Getting a napkin, I said, and smiled so it would be easy for her to leave. Good, she said. We're about to do wishes for the baby. It would be nice if you kept yours light. Light, as if weight were a choice. After she stepped away, I slipped the ultrasound back into the envelope with the letter and the second print. I wrote on the outside, in my neat cataloger's hand, for Brenna and baby, from Rowan and future cousin. I felt a private tug of joy at the words future cousin, the way they threaded me into the family chain without asking for permission. At the gift table, I moved my bag to the center. No fanfare. I tucked the envelope on top, nested into tissue. A cousin saw me and looked bored. Another book, she teased, because I am the one who gives hardcovers that smell like new leaves. Something to read, I said. The words balanced on a clean edge, not a threat, not a plea. In the living room, the wishes began. People said hope, health, sleep, ease. Someone said a strong latch, and everyone laughed. I held my paper and wrote, steady as if I were labeling a shelf, may your child be welcomed by people who practice listening. When I folded it, air pressed cool against my fingertips. As the last ribbon was snipped, as the floor shone with tissue feathers, as the room settled in that soft lull before the next act, I felt my resolve click into place. Not a hinge slamming, just a door finding home in its frame. Tessa's second heart sat on my screen like a lantern. I slipped my phone away and returned to the circle. Last one, Aunt Lila announced, lifting a box with rhinestone elephants. Then cake. She smiled, running the show. I watched Brenna sweep hair off her shoulder and grin at a camera. The quiet revenge I had chosen wasn't a strike. It was a reveal. The truth, simple, clean, mine. When the cake knife tapped the plate for attention, a dozen phones rose, ready to feed the feed. Someone said, speech, and Brenna stood, all satin and shine. She thanked everyone, adding pauses like glitter. It takes a village, she said, and the room purred in agreement. She looked toward me, then past me, to the cluster of friends who resemble her like mirror fragments. We're just so blessed. Aunt Lila clapped, then swept her hand toward the table. Let's finish the gifts, she trilled. There's a gray bag from Rowan. The name rang like a bell hung on a distant porch. Heads turned. A little hush fell, polite, expectant, like the quiet before someone opens a book they didn't ask for. Brenna tugged the tissue free and reached in. Her fingers found the cream envelope first. She frowned at the handwriting she knew from borrowed paperbacks and lists taped to borrowed blenders. She slipped a nail under the flap and drew out the letter on its crisp white, then the two prints that caught light like tiny moons. What's this? She asked, half to the room, half to herself. Read, I said, evenly, from my seat. My voice did not carry like hers, it arrived like water poured just enough to fill a glass. She scanned the letter, lips moving a little. Then she looked at the first print. Her face changed in increments: curiosity, confusion, recognition. The room tipped, a boat adjusting on a slow wave. Someone near the window drew in a breath that wanted to be a gasp, but stopped halfway. "It's an ultrasound," she said finally, a flat line in her voice where melody usually went. She angled it, and the room, trained by 1,000 social posts, leaned closer. "That white curve, that soft orbit. For your baby." "For our baby," I said, and the words were steady, almost tender. 12 weeks. Good heartbeat. I did not stand. I didn't need the height. Aunt Lila's hand fluttered toward her chest, then pressed down, ironing herself into composure. "Rowan," she said, controlled. "Darling, this is Brenna's day." I held her gaze for 2 counts. "I know," I said. "That's why I waited until you introduced my gift." No more explanation. I pulled the 3rd print from my purse and held it on my lap, the way a pianist rests a hand against clean keys. The room held so many eyes, but very little sight. Now the sight arrived, slow and bright, like the sun edging a curtain. My mother's face moved through 3 decades in one breath: the girl who bundled me for snow, the woman who smoothed my hair on recital nights, the winter mouth that said Andy like a verdict. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, quiet, surprised by her own softness. "I wanted to be sure," I said. "And I wanted to choose how I tell you." Brenna looked down at the print again, then at the crowd, then back at me. 100 captions ran through her eyes and fell away. "You could have called," she said. "I could have," I agreed, and let the calm sit, which it did, obedient and full. I also could have stayed home. Tessa's 2 hearts burned against my leg like a promise. The boy with the blue marker edged closer to my chair and stared at the white shape on the glossy black. "Baby?" he asked, his voice not yet trained for performance. "Baby," I said, and smiled at him, because his question was honest. Aunt Lila recovered her show voice. "Well," she said briskly, hands clasping. "Congratulations are in order. To Rowan and to," she faltered, unwilling to say Evan's name or my last winter out loud. "To everyone." There were congratulations, scattered and unsure, like birds deciding whether to land. Some hugs were real. My mother's was stiff but warm. A few cousins retreated to the island to dissect. But something in the center of the room had shifted, as if a table had been lifted and found to have legs of equal length after all. Brenna handed me the envelope, her mouth a straight line that might one day be a curve. "Congrats," she said, small, almost human. "I mean it." "Thank you," I said. There was nothing else to say that would not be a debt. The cake knife lay silent on the plate. No one asked for a speech. No one took my photo. I did not want one. I wanted exactly what the room now contained, a stillness where my name did not need to be argued into the air. The proof sat between us, simple as paper, bright as a small heartbeat. Justice, in its quiet shape, had arrived and taken a seat. Morning came like an apology, soft and clear. Evan brewed coffee in the chipped blue pot, the one from a yard sale that makes everything taste like campfire in June. He set a mug by my elbow and touched my shoulder in that way that says I see you before I ask you anything at all. "How was it?" he said, and we both smiled because the question had many drawers. "Loud," I said. "Predictable, then a little different." I slid the ultrasound across the table. He looked at it the way people look at ocean maps, with reverence and the practical curiosity of someone who knows waves. He kissed the edge of the paper, then my knuckles. "I am proud of you," he said. "Not for being pregnant. For choosing your voice." Tessa came after 9 with lemon tea in a thermos and a paper bag of scones. We ate at the little table that has hosted half our best choices. I told her everything, the gray bag, the envelope, the room's hush, the boy who asked, "Baby," like it was the first time the word had been needed. She laughed once, quietly, at the wish I wrote. "You're dangerous," she said, not meaning harm. "You make the truth sound like a blanket." When she left, the house fell into the particular peace of a late Sunday. I watered the pothos until the leaves shone. I folded the tiny hand-knit blanket my neighbor gave me last week, cream with a green border, because she knits for every baby on our street without asking if they are a boy or a girl. I hung the ultrasound on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a library card. The 3 small images looked like moons in different phases, steady, inevitable. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother appeared, typed slowly. I could tell, I did not handle Christmas well. "I am trying to do better. Congratulations, honey." I stared until the words steadied. I typed, "Thank you. I would like that." The door to that conversation opened a careful inch. It was enough for air. Brenna's text came later, short, stripped of varnish. "I wish you had told me sooner. Congratulations." I answered with the truth I could hold. I wasn't ready to share. "I'm happy for you." She responded with a single heart. "Not two." I took it as a sign in the language we speak now. On the porch, the street looked scrubbed. A neighbor walked his old dog, who stopped to inspect each hydrangea like it contained a letter. I sat with a glass of water and pressed my palm gently to the still new curve of my belly. Not enough to announce to passers-by, enough to remind us both that we were here, together, keeping time. Quiet revenge is a misnomer. It is not revenge at all, not in the way of scorched fields and slammed doors. It is the decision to lay the truth down in a room and refuse to dress it for anyone's comfort. Yesterday, I did not take a crown. I did not shove a chair. I placed an image where images go and let the room reorder itself around a fact. The air changed. That was enough. Evan came out with a hammer and a frame he had found in the hall closet. He set it on the table and held up the mat. "Fridge until 20 weeks, he said, practical. Then we hang it by the door. Tradition." He knelt to tighten a loose porch board, hands moving with the calm of a man who trusts wood, and me. The morning light made a lace of the railing's shadow. Somewhere down the block, a child laughed in the kind of way that repeats all day in memory. A bird landed on the neighbor's mailbox like a drop of ink. The world went on, unoffended by the size of any human triumph. I thought of Aunt Lila's chandelier and the way it held a soft, uncertain quiet. I thought of the wishes, of the ribbon curls, of Brenna's eyes when she recognized what she was holding. My cheeks warmed, not with vindication, but with relief that felt like a good cry 2 days later. We do not get to choose every ending. But we get to choose what we put on the table and whether we stay to watch. Inside, the kettle began to sing. I stood, slower now, laughed at myself for touching the doorframe as if the house might wobble. The air smelled like lemon and wood. I carried the framed print to the wall by the entryway and watched Evan mark a pencil line. He tapped the nail in with 3 practice strokes. The frame hung straight on the first try. "Looks right," he said. "It does," I said, and believed it with my whole small, growing life. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.